Claire, it is great to have you here. Thank you, Jeannie, for introducing us and welcoming Claire into our little community. And I'm really excited to understand more about human flourishing. So why don't I just kick off with a vague, silly answer or question, and just what is flourishing? How do you think about that? Why is it important? That might be obvious, but just, take us to kind of ground zero and we'll build up from there.
Okay, awesome. It's so good to be here. I've heard so much about this community, bless, and so thank you. Thank you all for being here, and I look forward to hearing more about each of you and what you do in this world and what you're up to, and that sometimes helps the conversation around flourishing as well. I think it's quite contextual and individual, and yeah, so I'm just looking forward to hearing your voices shortly. I won't speak at you. It's a nice small group, so we can be a little bit more conversational. So, it's a really good question. So what is flourishing? And really, I spend my days with people like Jeannie, and we've got a community around us that kind of been traveling with us for some years now. I think most of us did meet back, I think it was 2018, 19, in real life. And it's funny that, Jeannie, I feel like I see you in real life all the time. It was a bit weird when you just said we haven't actually seen each other since, because it feels like we have. We're so close, but yeah, I initially kind of came to this topic, or this notion of exploring flourishing through the exploration of flow state. We both trained at a place called the Flow Genome Project, which was with Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheel at the time, the leaders in the flow research, specifically probably through the science or neuroscience lens. And when I kind of went down that rabbit hole 5 or 6 years ago, I basically haven't come out since. I'm still there and intrigued and fascinated by this concept of flow state and how humans experience it and the benefits of it. And I think flow state in ways kind of lies at the heart of human flourishing. So it's a big part of this notion of flourishing. So,
and I'm going to interrupt, and I apologize.
Yes, please do.
Why, a 5-year rabbit hole is not anything to laugh at. What is it about flow that just, I have my own journey with it, and I feel the addiction with it and how beautiful it is. But what is it for you personally, right? Maybe that's it, but I'd be curious to hear your perspective on it.
I think it's, flow is sort of defined as that peak mental state where you feel your best and you perform your best. And you just use the word addictive, and it is addictive, or they say autotelic, meaning it's, you seek it out as a human for the sake of the feeling and the experience. And it's a very intrinsic seeking. Yeah. And I think for me, what's intriguing about it is not only the feeling, it's a feeling where I think humans feel most alive and tend to be operating from their most authentic self or part of themselves. And we do amazing things in flow, and there could be fairly mundane day-to-day things that you find some sort of level of meaningfulness in, or they could be quite extraordinary things. Some of the greatest human feats have been done in a flow state. I feel like it's a big part of our humanness that perhaps isn't accessed as much as it could be. And I think a lot of people are very flow prone, but a lot of people don't experience a lot of flow in their life, and there's a lot of barriers to it. And 21st century living tends to create barriers for flow. So I see it as just
is flow our natural state and our minds just get us out of it? Or is it something that's unusual, even if we were sort of primordial in some way? How do you think about that?
It's something that every single human can access. We all have access to it. It's not a state that you can be in all the time, because it's quite an energetic state. So our brain is doing a lot of work when we're in that state. There's a whole flood of neurochemicals flooding in and out of our system, and it's takes a lot of energy. So you can't sort of actually be in flow all of the time. You would probably die. That would be more like mania. But it certainly is a state that we could return to or access more frequently. And I think that would be a super healthy thing for humanity, especially when it's anchored to I mean, the interesting thing is flow is a ethically neutral state. So you could and can be in flow to do things that are not so good. And you see that, you see some of the, Hitler probably accessed a lot of flow. A lot of cult leaders access flow. A lot of terrorist groups are fueled by flow.
Yeah.
But if it's anchored to, good human values and purpose, then it can be a really, really healthy thing for humans and for humanity, and I think for the planet writ large.
Is mania just extended flow? Is that the right way to think of that?
No, I wouldn't officially say that. I'm not a psychologist, so I'll probably get in a lot of trouble if I say that.
I don't need to put you in the spot. I just I hadn't thought of that.
No, but
before.
it's a hyperstate. So it's like it's not something that I think it's certainly something that requires a lot of recovery from. I mean, and you can certainly be in flow for days on end. People do experience that. But what comes at the tail end of that is the need to recover. And if people don't recover properly and actively and consciously, then that can lead to burnout. So whilst flow can be a really nice antidote to burnout, it can also be something that causes burnout. So it's it's a cycle. There's a cycle that you go through that you need to be very conscious of and careful of, that you're moving through that cycle in a healthy way.
Makes sense. Yeah, thank you. I didn't mean to derail. And
that's okay. I love the questions. It helps.
Great. So flow is kind of like the foundation of flourishing.
Yeah, it's one of the foundations. I think it's a big part. That's my personal feeling, and I think a lot of the people that I work with and coach, and a lot of my peers have come to this work on flourishing through going down that flow rabbit hole. So I think it's super important. So there's human flourishing. That's one thing. So that can be characterized as many. There's different definitions depending what lens you're looking at it through, whether it's positive psychology, humanistic psychology, but really it's around a sense of thriving, a sense of well-being, a sense of growth. There's a term that Maslow coined called self-actualization. So it's a pursuit of fulfillment, meaningfulness, goals, growth, that kind of thing. It tends to encompass many different aspects of health. So physical health, mental health, emotional well-being, positive relationships, healthy relationships, feeling engaged with things in life, and finding a deep sense of rich meaningfulness. That tends to be what flourishing means for humans. I like to, at the moment, talk about it's not so much a definition, but in working with so many people in this world today, we talk about the future of flourishing, which is an interesting concept. Almost the future of flourishing is kind of a question. What is the future of flourishing? We're not sure, and we're interested in what that looks and feels like. And I think there's many different futures of flourishing. But the present day, what does flourishing look like today in a world that is fairly chaotic, fairly uncertain, a lot of trauma, a lot of difficult things happening right here, right now? I think flourishing can sometimes have that stigma that if you're not flourishing, then that's a bad thing, or flourishing is all about good, positive things. And I think in the world that we live in today and how things are today, I think flourishing is also around how to just master those difficult moments, whether they're moments of adversity or challenge or complexity or grief or sadness. Being able to kind of move through those moments with a sense of self, a sense of authenticity, a sense of, with your values consciously on your mind, or, accessing your values through those moments, through those difficult moments. And just being able to sort of get to the end of the day and feel like you've mastered moments in the day as you've navigated or traversed this kind of tricky territory that we're in right now as humans. I feel that that's flourishing today in 2023. So we like to kind of talk about that as well, because I don't like this idea that we're in pursuit of something like, all this beautiful growth and amazingness at a time that's, pretty hard, in different ways for different people. So I like to sort of also talk to flourishing as, just mastering these moments in real time with a sense of purpose and meaningfulness and sort of mastery of self.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think the notion that comes to mind, or what sparked in me hearing you talk through that, was this notion that like putting happiness at the apex of the hierarchy can be like very empty, right? Because like if everything's happy all the time, like it might like lack meaning, right? Like you might not have adversity, you might not like be stressed or, but like you might be lost in a way, right? And like flourishing struck me in a similar way where it's not positive all the time. It's not everything's always perfect. It's, oh shit, like I fell and I stumbled hard, but I know how to recover. I know how to get better. Like, I don't know, maybe talk through that a little bit of like, it's not all positive all the time. It's the ability, growth mindset or be able to overcome things. Like, just talk to us about that.
I really feel, I keep coming back to this term, just mastering moments. So, and that, what to master a moment is different for everyone according to your values, your purpose in life, where you and how you find meaning. But I think it's a lot of it's around meaningfulness. Happiness is a subjective thing and a funny word, and it's momentary, it's fleeting, and with it's important, but so is sadness. I mean, you can't have the happiness without the spectrum, and you can't have the joy without, the other side of that. The other, and understanding that all of these emotions or feelings or experiences are on a spectrum is important, and the spectrum is part of living life and finding meaning. I think the positive psychology stuff is good. And I think it's really good to balance it out with more of the humanistic psychology perspective, and also the work of Viktor Frankl, for example, looking at where and how to find that rich, deep sense of meaningfulness, even in the most horrific circumstances. So I'm really interested in layering together those different lenses, and in the training that we've done in the past, it has been about integrating or giving access or insight into these different perspectives, and then encouraging people to kind of formulate their own synthesis of that in a way that's healthy and useful for them.
Beautiful. I've never asked this question before, and if it's a dumb question, just tell me. But is like how entwined are love and flow? Like, are they very much the same thing? Are they totally separate? Like, I don't know. It just struck me that there's like an interesting overlap there, maybe.
That's such a beautiful question. I've never been asked that question before, but it's making me smile. So when you say love, do you mean romantic love? What do you mean by love?
Yeah, it's such an empty word in so many ways today, right? Like Hallmark love cards and everything. But like, yeah, defining love is maybe outside the bounds of this call. But like, maybe passion is easier to deal with. I don't know. Like romantic love didn't come to mind like first thing, but like I love a certain activity, or like I love, but like I don't know, like love spending time with my wife. There's a romantic element there, but it's more like it's easy and natural and authentic. So I don't know. Maybe you have something to add to that.
So I can speak to all of it. Romantic love and flow, I have similar, the feeling is similar in ways because of the neurochemical cocktail that's happening in your brain. Romantic love, or that beginnings of romantic love where you're in that, that state of euphoria. A lot of the feel-good neurochemicals that turn up there are similar to what turn up in that flow state, and it focuses you. You're very focused. You're very present. You're very in the moment. Yeah. And like flow, those chemicals flush out at some point. Like they're not there forever, and that's why that feeling of the initial feeling of love does over time morph into something different. But then there's this notion of unconditional love, or be love. If you've studied any of Abraham Maslow's work or Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman's work, who has moved Maslow's work forward and explored it more deeply, they talk to this concept of being love or be love, which is unconditional love. And I think, again, I feel that notion of unconditional love, which is loving from a space of being and giving rather than needing or receiving, I think that lies at the heart of human flourishing as well. So it's a really interesting question. That's a huge topic that I'm going to write that down as an excellent topic of discussion for somewhere, sometime. And then talking about it in sort of more the terms of passion. Passion and purpose, or curiosity, passion, and purpose tend to be flow triggers. So purpose is the most potent of the three, but passion certainly gets you some of the way. So things that you love to do or are passionate about doing drive focus.
Yeah.
And flow follows focus always. So it's a deeply focused state. So things that are, getting you into the present moment and driving focus are flow triggers. So yeah, I love that question. Flow and love intertwined in some way.
Yeah, I'll need to think about it too. You say flow follows focus. Can it be the other way around too? Can you flow and then fall into focus, or is it always the other way around?
Tends to, Jeannie might be able to speak into this. She's also very expert on the flow state. I think that it may not be a conscious focusing, but I think the flow would always follow something that's focused your attention. Do you have a different way of?
No, that's exactly how, yeah. And that's the science that I know definitely points more towards focus first and then the flow. And it's because of that, you have to be completely enraptured by something that's got your attention. Although I don't know. I mean, if I really think about it and reflect back, I could see how maybe I wasn't really focused, but then maybe I did something, or there was something in my environment that pulled me in, and then it, that state, or maybe the beginnings of a flow state, caused me to focus more intensely.
I can imagine certain triggers, right? I'm definitely not the expert on this, but if you're meditating or whatever, that first breath is kind of the trigger to your body that you're sort of like in that space, right? And maybe it doesn't happen right away, but you prime yourself or whatever.
Yeah.
And Claire, the other thing that really sparked in me, I find myself, if I'm struggling to do something or frustrated or whatever, my hack is figuring out the thing that is connected to in my long-term belief system, and just making that connection clear. And it makes it easier. It doesn't make it easy, but it's easier at least. Oh, okay, I'm getting up at 3 a.m, to take care of my daughter for this reason, or even if it's work stuff, just to make that purpose, curiosity, passion, right? That purpose clearer in the moment, to not just give up on it.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's sort of combining that notion of purpose, meaningful purpose, long-term purpose, and then also a clear goal. So which focuses you. So that gives you the focus to get up, you know why you're getting up, and you know what the benefit is long-term, and it's anchored to your values and sense of authenticity and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Super cool. Talk to us a little bit about your profession, right? Again, you fell into this rabbit hole, and you're doing it with your life, which is amazing. How do you work with people? What does that look like? What do you work on? Just give us an overview of you professionally, I guess.
Well, I fell into it because I was doing a doctorate in business leadership back in Australia 5 or 6 years ago. Still doing it, actually. It's all the work got in the way of writing that thesis, but the reason for it back then was I was really concerned about mental health inside organizations. Mental health globally is a problem, big problem, and I saw leadership or organizations as potentially having an important role to play in somehow up-leveling mental health, and even a responsibility. And the doctorate was looking at, well, what kind of leadership's required for that? And I was particularly anchoring it to times of great change or VUCA conditions, which was all pre-COVID, of course. So, that sort of then got amplified. And it was initially my sort of thinking and action research led to creating cultures of deep connection and psychological safety. That felt like a really good sort of way of helping with up-leveling well-being inside organizations. And I was working with a lot of leaders to create those kind of conditions for deep connection inside an organization. And I did that with a few different companies, and then sort of got to the point where, like, what do you do with what you've got this culture of deep connection, and things are feeling better and people are feeling better and more engaged. What else could you do with that? You know, that it didn't feel like I'd sort of got all the way there. And that's when someone handed me Rise of Superman, which is one of Stephen Kotler's books. And it was all about the neuroscience of flow and the fact that the psychology of flow is one thing. And Mihai Csikszentmihalyi did a lot of that work in the 80s and 90s. He's known as the godfather of flow. And then, but the psychology of flow is very personal. So it's difficult to scale or difficult to train. Other than in a one-on-one kind of a context. The science or the neuroscience of flow, the neurobiology of flow is more universal. So there's certain triggers, there's a flow cycle, there's things that people can learn and understand and know universally that can help people access flow more readily. So that's when I thought, okay, and because flow was a peak state where you feel your best, so it does naturally physiologically and mentally up-level how you feel. And also when you perform your best, it was sort of like this win-win for leadership, in that through the same training, which only involved understanding how to use your brain and body to its potential, that you were dealing with two big problems inside an organization: well-being and productivity, innovation, meaningful progress. So that's where I started coaching and consulting, and sort of specifically inside organizations, working with leaders. And then over time, I just kept doing all the different training that was out there that was focused on flow, which was namely just through the Flow Genome Project at the time. So did a lot of their courses, eventually did their coaching certification, which is where and how I met Jeannie. And then the two leaders of that organization split, Jamie Wheel and Stephen Kotler, and Stephen went to build his own organization called the Flow Research Collective. And I ended up joining that organization as their first coach. So I coached lots and lots of people one-on-one in their training, flow training courses. And then over time, I ended up helping design the courses and running a coaching program there and building out a coaching team and doing all the things. So I worked with them for a couple of years, sort of as a startup, helping them get off the ground. And I coached hundreds of people at that time, which, was an amazing experience, and also just exhausting. It was during the pandemic. I was stuck in Perth in Western Australia, working a US time zone. So, working through the night, it was crazy. But wonderful. But that's where and how I sort of ended up having such a breadth and depth of experience coaching people, one-on-one individuals, but then also inside, they did a lot of B2B work as well. I coached the San Francisco Police Department in flow, which was probably the highlight of my career, and amazing. So this kind of flow and flourishing training for first responders or for people that are in those high stress environments is brilliant. And then over time, I decided to go out and do my own thing. I saw a gap where a lot of these trainings were being done in silos. So people were getting sort of trained up in the neuroscience of flow or flourishing, but they were missing some of the humanistic kind of layers. So things like purpose and meaning and values and like that kind of stuff. And then there's the other work around the sort of the nervous system and how to harness your nervous system to work for you and not against you and that kind of thing. I sort of saw like this gap where a lot of these different cognitive sciences could be layered together to create a blueprint in ways for human flourishing that was a bit more holistic. So that's when I decided to start the Future of Flourishing, which is my startup, and start creating and testing and piloting some programs and seeing what we could do with that. And that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. And we're just sort of relaunching now with a new offering that's specifically for coaches, impact leaders, and entrepreneurs who are doing the work in service of human and global flourishing. So they're kind of doing work dedicated to that, but often, often they are not actually prioritizing their own flourishing. So I've seen that working with so many coaches, so many leaders, so many entrepreneurs, that they're doing amazing things, but they're not taking care of themselves. So we're going to set up an ecosystem that really prioritizes their own flourishing, so that they can do their work better and continue to kind of make the great impact without affecting their own health in a negative way. So
Super
that's where
cool.
we're at today. Yeah.
That's awesome. We'll spend a lot of time on FOF, but the last part of what you said struck me, and I was kind of thinking throughout, but I'd be curious how you'd think about maybe like your organizational bent, right? Like you started there and like there's a very like team holistic element versus like the individual, right? Like my background's in tennis and like inherently like selfish and like individualistic in that way. And I've been part of teams forever also, but like I guess I have like the like me first mindset, and hopefully not in like a very negative selfish way, but like I don't feel like if I'm not all there, it's really hard for me to be there for my family, for my friends, for all these things. So like, to not make a long question too long, how do you think about that? Like you're working more with individuals now that can then impact their teams. So is it more like you learn that starting with individuals is more effective? Is there a different reason for that? Like, yeah, like people versus teams, how do you approach that?
Well, I think, if planetary flourishing starts with individual flourishing, and exactly how you just explained it. If you're not right and you don't have it together and you don't have a deep connection to your sense of self, and sense of meaning and sense of purpose, then it's going to be very difficult for you to show up fully for others, whether that's your family or your team or your community. So it has to begin with the individual, and that's just how it goes. So that's and that's why we've been focused on this notion of self-leadership. So first, so really a lot of the coaching and programs I've developed are around prioritizing your self-leadership anchored to flow and flourishing. And then that's a long journey. I mean, none of this is easy, and it's a never-ending journey. And it's a confronting journey. It's why a lot of people don't even start the journey, is because it begins with this radical self-awareness, which is really uncomfortable. Ignorance is bliss. Once you start becoming, doing that work on yourself and getting to know yourself and looking at yourself and delving into the shadow and exploring those personal narratives. I mean, it's hard work, and it's hard work to do alone. And whilst I think it starts with the individual, and it's very individual work to begin with, I think to be doing it with fellow travelers is really important. To have peer support, to have friendship, to have a coach or a therapist. I think that's really, really important. So 100% starts with individual, and then from there over time, and it doesn't have to take forever either. I mean, because you can be doing it in tandem. I think that individual work alongside flourishing with others, whether that's a team or a community or family. The best feeling on earth, I think, for humans is flourishing together, or something known as group flow or team flow. That's one of, flow is a sought after state. Group flow is the most sought after state. Humans, there's a lot of anecdotes there and research that's, humans will seek that out above anything else. It starts with individual, and then it becomes, societal, communal, team. And then from there, hopefully we get flourishing communities, flourishing organizations, flourishing enterprises, and then over time, a flourishing globe and planet.
That's beautiful. Jeannie, before we go into the future of flourishing, is there anything you wanted to jump in or add or make sure we talk to Clare about?
I just think it's always fascinating to hear Clare talk about this and in different contexts. And and different groups, there's always something I'm learning. So I just feel so appreciative for that. And I think, what I love hearing in all of this is that the way that flow sits at the heart of flourishing, and now having, kind of defined flourishing is not something that's just for the elite, or, it's held for just a select few. It really is like the concept of, this is a new way of being, like a new way of operating in the world. And I think at the, what really sits at the foundation of that is a really deep level of acceptance for all of the highs and lows, like we talked about earlier, like mastering a moment, just being able to navigate moment to moment to moment within a day, within a week, within a month. That form of expansiveness is so critical. And I see and I hear a lot of people talking about flow states and flourishing as it's like some froofy concept and an idealistic way of living. And it's not. It's just the acceptance of, and deep acceptance of all of it. And the one word that always comes to my mind for that, like for all of the emotions and experiences that humans have throughout a lifetime, is joy, because I think joy is the only thing that I can really think of that is able to contain all of it, all of the grief, all of the highs, all the happiness, the, just the meaningfulness and the fulfillment, I think. And I love personally, like looking at, okay, how does that run alongside and integrate with flow and flourishing and the things that we, how can we create the conditions for the most, how can we create the conditions for the most ideal situations and experiences to show up more often? So I just, that's all I'm really thinking of right now.
Yeah, I love that. I just want to sort of that concept of joy for me as well. And we talk about this, Jeannie, but that's so integral and vital to this whole experience, because I talk about having these, I seek out these tiny slices of joy throughout my day, whether it's that first coffee that you have, whether it's the sunrise, sunset, often it's, looking at the sky for me, a deep conversation, they're just little slices that bring joy to a day. And you can experience joy immediately after any kind of sorrow or grief. Like a joy can just come to you in an instant, and no matter what's just happened before that, it's everywhere. So I think that's, for me, also just it encapsulates the light and the dark. And to feel joy, you have to feel all the other stuff. You have to feel the darkness and the grief and the sadness, and it's so thank you for bringing that up, Jeannie. It's beautiful.
Amazing. Claire, tell us about FOF now, kind of the vision, the work you do. Like I'm sure it's very idiosyncratic in many ways, but at a high level, what does that look like? And then I personally just love to learn like tips or things to keep in mind to, enrich my life and my thinking and all that, and sort of what we can learn from all your experiences.
So the future of flourishing is sort of, it's been 2 years of experimenting, and I guess at the beginning I wasn't quite sure. It was something inside me that has just sort of evolved and grown, and it's really now just in, this group is the first groups that I've really started talking to about it. We've just started our promotions this week for our launch. So it was a special moment for me to start sort of bringing it to the world in the form that it's in now, which is it's grown into this idea of being a sort of a media and training communications organization. I think the gap that I see is that there's just so much research and knowledge and information out there. It's everywhere and it gets funded well. But the communication of that knowledge and research is poor and doesn't get funded well. So so much potential is left on the table because it's in textbooks or doctoral theses or books that not everyone is going to pick up and read. So I'm really passionate about translating and communicating the science and the philosophy of in particular human flourishing right now, because we have to start with the humans, I think, because the humans then, if they're flourishing or experiencing flourishing and flow, then they're going to make better decisions for the planet. So the idea is to initially create a membership platform that's really designed to serve the servers, serve the people that are doing the good work at the moment, and make sure that they have the conditions to flourish. And then over time, I'm really interested in then taking that research and knowledge and applying it, so innovating with it. So we're going to set up a venture lab next year, dedicated to enterprise and entrepreneurs that are focused on human and global flourishing. So that's sort of the big picture plan, but we're kicking off with a membership platform for coaches, leaders, and entrepreneurs.
And Claire, just to regurgitate that to make sure I got it. So it's a community that you kind of join, right? The membership platform.
Correct.
With you get a like distilled insight into the research that's done and sort of like how to incorporate it into your own life, or is there something I missed with that second part there?
So the membership is there's many different aspects to it. It's trying to sort of solve a few problems. The big one for coaches and social entrepreneurs in particular is connection or lack of connection. They're quite isolated. So initially it's providing a space for them to come and connect with like-minded souls, to connect with peers, to be able to either debrief or get insights or support or mentoring from people that kind of get them.
Yep.
The other thing is continuous learning in this space is a big deal. And what you'll find is coaches in particular continuously spending a lot of money on their education, on certifications, which is fine, but it just means that, you know, so much money goes into that. And I think there should be a space where you can continuously learn and integrate the learnings without having to spend massive amounts of money constantly. So there'll be a program of events where people can come and on a weekly basis experience really high quality learning experiences from subject matter experts, from practitioners, from other entrepreneurs and coaches. So that would be a big aspect of it. There'll be training, on-demand classes and training that they'll have access to as well. We are going to be open sourcing the program that we developed over the last 2 years, which has been co-created with a number of different subject matter experts and also then tested on about 100 different CEOs, leaders and coaches. So we'll be gifting that to our members, and they'll be able to white label the scripts of the content and use it in their own coaching and leadership practices. So there'll be in real life events as well. We're very focused on doing stuff in local cities and towns. So there'll be ability to meet people in real life as well. And the idea is to have, it's a very low entry point cost-wise for 12 months. And we want that membership to be large. There's a lot of us needing this kind of thing. So that we're hoping to kind of get to quite a lot of people, but create very intimate and deeply connected experiences within the platform.
Super cool.
Yeah. So that's sort of stage one, and we'll see how that goes. We've got a launch event on the 28th of November with some awesome guest speakers and some artists, a DJ. It's going to be quite an interactive, fun little 60 minutes online. And that's where you can kind of come, I guess, and get a sense of the vibe and the kind of experience that we're trying to create. I think, you know, right here, right now, again, in 2023, with what we're experiencing, I think flourishing has a lot to do with deep connection. And I think that's missing a lot in our sector. In Jeannie will know, like in the, sort of the flow and flourishing communities, there's a lot of training and there's a lot of science and there's a lot of knowledge, and there's not a lot of places where you can go and connect, continue to learn and integrate the learnings with like-minded souls. So we're going to try and provide.
Claire, it's, you know, the vector is different, but the intention with Lattice and what you're building
Yes.
is so similar. Like,
Yeah.
you know, the original thing for me was like, I'm a super nerd and like I love learning about all these things, but like
Yeah.
I can't find other people to sort of like nerd out with. And
Yeah.
like I have all these questions and like where do I go and who would I talk to about it? And like there's just a lot of, I think, overlapping intentionality, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
Would you, if it's open, would you send us the link for the launch event on the 20th? It would be fun to, you know, share
Yeah.
that with the community and, you know,
Yeah.
if we can attend and all that good stuff, that'd be fun if you'd be open to that.
We would love that. We would love to have all there join us for sure. I'll send you the link.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And one other thing that kind of sparked in me, I had a good friend, and he defines a good friend as someone where you often go like, wait, you too? And like I like that simple notion of like, wait, you also love X, or like you also think Y. There's like a very simple, deep thing to that. And again, having this community of people that are facing similar challenges, or you know, that you just feel safe going to, right? Because if you're the leader of some organization, it's often hard to like talk to someone at that organization and say, I'm struggling with this, or I don't know what to do, or whatever it might be. And just to have that, you know, trusted person who doesn't care at all about what you do, or isn't tied into like your normal world, that psychological safety, that sort of openness is hard. It's hard to find otherwise.
It is. I agree. Yeah. Yeah. So I see so much similarity around what you've created from what I've seen. So I think it's that thing, find the others, you know, we're out there, and I think joining together and collaborating. I mean, this is the other thing, super passionate about collaboration, like real collaboration.
Yeah.
And finding ways, you know, again, I think that's our way forward. I think a lot of the sector that I work within is driven by intense silos and competition. And so my secret little mission is to bring everyone together and in a meaningful way. And that the faculty that we're building out is a part of that. So we've got people from all over the place, from different disciplines and different organizations coming together in one place for no other reason than to connect and to problem solve together. It's, you know, and that's what I love nothing more than getting the people that I love to fall in love with each other.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of my mission as well, is just sort of bringing people together for that reason. So
I love it. I love it. Claire, we're dwindling towards the end of our time, unfortunately. What else can we collectively do to support you, to learn more, to be part of the journey? You know, we mentioned the launch on the 20th. Please send me details. I'll make sure it gets kind of spread out. But what else can we do?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. I mean, yes, it'd be wonderful to have you all at the launch. We have something called the First 300 Club, which is the first 300 members, as special members, founding members, that I think will be really important to helping us create the right kind of ecosystem. So I can send you a link to that as well, and you know what that includes and what that looks and feels like. So all very welcome to join our first 300. And I think I would just love to learn more about what you guys do, and also how we can support you, and how we can kind of, you know, find reasons to hang out more.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And you know, if it's ever helpful, I've made every mistake trying to build a community. And if any of those are helpful to you, I would love to pass that on. And you know, I think
how do you make your mistakes look like successes?
Oh God, because I hide most of them, Jeannie, and I just don't talk about them. That's how. No, but in all seriousness, like there's a lot of like paradoxical things. Like the nichier you make it, the like better it becomes in like a very weird way, right? Because like you can actually identify with that group, and it's like, oh wow, the like YouTube thing, right? Like, wait, there's someone out there who actually cares about mental models as much as I do, or learning about these like. That's hard. You know, a lot of online things try to be all things to all people, and you sort of like lose the soul of the thing. Anyway, we don't have to like go into all this right now, but if that community building thing is ever helpful to jam on for a bit, like I've learned a lot. I like talking about it, and it's hard. Like it's really hard to like build community. So if any of those lessons are ever helpful,
I would love that. I'd love to pick your brains around all of that for sure. Thank you.
Okay. Let's make that happen.
Okay.
Anything else, Claire? First 300 launch. What else is top of mind? Again, like the collaborative, supportive thing is huge to me too. So anything we could do.
Yeah, I think that's about it. That's our initial focus, and then yeah, we'll get that off the ground for 2023, and we're excited about next year. And yeah, I think that's.
Can I just chime in to not forget the WhatsApp group?
Yes, we do have a WhatsApp group. So people are welcome to join that. That's just, just for anyone and everyone that's sort of keen to connect. It's a small group, but it's growing. So I can also say that anyone can jump in there too.
Super fun. Thank you, Peter. That's awesome. Jeannie, and if there's anything else you can think of, and like, obviously this is not meant to be like a point of time when it's over or something, but just hopefully the beginning of many. So if other things come up in the near future or in the long term, we can do this again. We can keep learning from each other, but that would be really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love it. And I was just curious if anybody else on the call has anything that popped to mind that you want to share or whatever before we all jump out of here and go about the evening and day and night. I guess we're all over the place, aren't we?
Yeah.
What came to mind for me while you were talking, one, I think it's wonderful you're curating the resources because, like I know there's stuff at Harvard, there's stuff at Berkeley, but to actually have somebody with your expertise curate it, super important. I mean, that's the value. The question that came up for me was around neurodiverse personalities. So the autism, ADHD, is there a flow state? And why I think that's relevant, because you're looking at entrepreneurs, and it's, there's quite a bit of research out there that many entrepreneurs actually are neurodiverse, neurodiverse and divergent. Has there been some work around flow state in that regards?
So there's been a lot of work around creativity and neurodivergence, and in actual fact, Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman has done a lot of that work. So I work very closely with him, and he's the one that's running a lot of programs on self-actualization. So I can point you onto some of that research, or there's a couple of books that he's written. I think that when it comes, I think a lot of particularly autistic people are very good at accessing flow, high flow individuals. I'm not expert on it. Jeannie might be able to speak into it more than me, but certainly, I mean, creativity is a flow trigger, and flow enhances creativity. So there's a really nice sort of loop there. So there's certainly some interesting reading to do around that I can point you in the direction of.
Yeah, that's a great topic for a totally different call.
Yeah.
I love that, Peter. No, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, and you guys, I know we're at time, but I just want to say thank you so much for Akeem. It's so good to see your face too. But yeah, thank you guys so much for this. And Blas and Claire, you guys are just amazing individually, and I can imagine collectively together. So
never
the broker, Jeannie.
What's that?
I was just saying, thanks for being the broker. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah. And Peter, I interrupted you. What were you saying?
Well, I was just saying that I saw that group flow working at a World Exposition, and I attribute it to everyone knew their job was ending at the end of the fair at the end of the summer, but to watch 80,000 people in group flow is something I've never seen again in my life, and it was really
spectacular. Yeah,
powerful, super powerful. Yeah.
Something to be handled with responsibility. Great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing, y'all. Well, Claire, thank you again for taking the time, and excited to follow along. This was really fun.
Thank you all so much for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome.
Bye, everyone. Bye, you guys.
Yes. See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.